Oh,
Yes. I'm sorry. Go
okay,
ahead.
no worries. Um, and so we basically, we have we're like a national mass organization, so we're trying to like see who all throughout the country is trying to like come together to organize towards that mission that I just mentioned earlier. Um, and right now we have two chapters that exist in New York, in Brooklyn and the Bronx. Um, and they do a lot of like work in their own neighborhoods, centering around like education, like just educational discussions where we kind of like bring the community together and talk about like the history of Puerto Rico or like currently what's happening in Puerto Rico. And we also do a lot of like work to stay connected with organizations that currently exist in PR. So we're like in constant communication with a whole like list of orgs. So organizations like UTIER, FMPR, Mujeres Viequenses. There's a whole bunch, but we have like people who are specifically part of doing that work directly. Um, that way we can be informed about what's going on, and like how we can best support. So for example, if like an organization is like makes a call to action for us, like if an organization's doing a protest out there, they'll like reach out to us and try to figure out how can we support them. Like, do we want to speak, do we want to put out a statement, do we want to plan an action, stuff like that. So yeah, we do educational discussions. We do aligned work with orgs in PR. And just like in general, like figuring out what are the current issues that Puerto Ricans face, both in the archipelago, but also like here in the United States, like in the diaspora, and like what do we do about it? Um, and so yeah, we just launched officially this past was it this it wasn't this past Sunday, it was the Sunday before. So a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Oh my God, time is flying by. And part of that launch was like having an event every single day of the week, um, to kind of just like have on Monday we had an educational discussion on like Puerto Rican politics because as you guys know, the election just happened for the governor and resident commissioner. Um, and just like a lot of people in the diaspora don't know like who the parties are, and like the history of the parties and things. So we did that. We created a bunch of artwork because we went to Puerto Rico back last January, and so we made artwork sort of like representing the work that we did out there, and what we learned. Um,
This was Vieques, right?
yeah, so that was part of the trip. Yeah. Some of us went to Vieques, we went to Hormigueros, we did some work, just like throughout. Um, but yeah, and we also did like a little bit of an art build surrounding like displacement in general. So we launched a national campaign, basically having people come together and figure out how they want to address displacement in their local like areas. And so we talked a little bit about the history of displacement for Puerto Rican, um, in Puerto Rico, but also in specific neighborhoods. And then we made artwork on it. And then we had an elections processing event after that, and we closed the week with a film screening, which is where how Miranda really kind of plays a role in this conversation here. She was able to like screen her short film on Donitas, which is like a very famous Puerto Rican, like honestly, like a historical landmark. You know what I mean? Like it's been there for so long, and a lot
Well,
of bodies there.
well, we used to call social clubs. Back in the
Yes,
day, we had social clubs. That's what it was.
That's still, yeah, like that's still its name
yeah.
officially. Just everybody
The
calls it
social club, yeah.
does, but yeah.
Yeah, and then we had another filmmaker, Sunny, who screened their short film on Filiberto's home. Um, and so, yeah, that's like a long version of who we are and what we do and like how our launch like went. Um, but we had a conversation in the closing where we had a lot of like youth who are from Puerto Rico who were like born and raised there. And we had people from the diaspora just kind of like talking about how our experiences are, unique and different. And how we need to like, figure out how we can unite and sort of like understand where one or the other is coming from because like having all perspectives is important if we're like working towards this goal of liberating Puerto Rico. But
So
that's kind of how it came about. Yeah.
that young guy, he seemed very angry. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know his
Hmm.
name. The one that Miranda started talking to.
Yeah, yeah.
And like he made a statement that the gringos no importa, they don't care. And I think what's her name? Monica turned around and said, "What are you talking about? The Puerto Rican gringos, the American gringos? Who are you talking about?" And he just got even more upset by that answer, which is "Los gringos." He yelled it out, "Los gringos." He was very thing, and he said that there's something to the extent, and I may be wrong, but he said because I was leaving, I had to go to see that shitty fight. We're not going to discuss the fight today. He said that it's not the same. Like the attitude is um the attitude from America, which is the United States, right? Why you call it the diaspora, to the island is completely different, and there's no connection. There's no way to help them. That's what I heard as I was leaving. I may be wrong, or you guys are free to correct me if you want. But and I found that it's important to hear from people who are on the island. By the way, this is my friend Spray. He's going to be real quiet. He's interested in our conversation, and I invited him. And then I have another friend coming in. Her name is Zule. She's interested in this as well. But yeah, I that's why I invited Tato and I invited John. They're interested. So, John, you have any questions for them?
Yeah, well, well, actually, yeah. I was listening to the description of the organization, and by the name of it, it to me it's suggesting a purpose. But I don't want to like jump into a conclusion, and I wanted to ask, what is the main purpose of the mission of the organization? Are they trying to achieve something? Are they trying to make some kind of change happen? I just have that question first. What's the mission of the organization?
I can answer this. For us, our mission is simply to achieve the independence of Puerto Rico. And like Coco was talking about, there's like many ways that we envision that we can like work towards achieving that goal, which is like through education and carrying out different campaigns. And we believe that like through the organizing that we do, and the way that we like build up new organizers who are also embedded in their communities, we can slowly but surely like raise the consciousness of people, help them understand like what is the condition of Puerto Rico, and help them feel inspired to want to fight back and try to achieve independence as well.
Okay.
That's what we
So,
mean when we say that we're like a mass organization, because we like incorporate the general masses into this work.
okay. And that was the organization goal is to achieve the independence for the island. So basically, you're more affiliated with el Partido Independentista Puertorriqueño because that's basically their whole uh, existence is to achieve the independence for the island. Is it more or less like the same thing?
So we have like there's definitely things that we have in common with the PIP for sure. But the way that we approach organizing isn't through like advocating for any political party to create that change. We advocate for it to be created through like the participation of, like I said, the masses, of like the communities and like different groups of people. And another thing that separates us from the PIP is that we are pretty firm in our conviction that we want an independence that is anti-capitalist. The PIP doesn't have a super strong position on like whether or not independence would be incorporating capitalism or not, but a lot of the members do tend to lead towards independence with capitalism involved still, like Juan Dalmau, for example.
Okay. Well, look, ever since I was a kid, I always envisioned el Partido Popular Democrático as my main, I used to pull towards that. I got that mostly from my family, but then I started, growing up and seeing what each party meant and what they stood for, and basically till about 20 2004. From there on, everything changed. My whole way of thinking changed. It doesn't mean I'm pro statehood. It doesn't mean that I want independence because I've been living here for 25 years. So I've been through what a typical life is here and what the economy is like and all the problems that we've been through, Maria, the earthquakes, everything. I've been through everything. Um, but I found it really interesting to find a group that's interested in the independence of Puerto Rico, but they don't actually live there. They live in the States, and I was born and raised in New York, so I've been both places. I live half of my life in the States and half of my life here, so I kind of have a base for a comparison between both systems because they're very different. And life here is very different to the States, where every time I go on vacation, I go into culture shock because I've been here for over 20 years. So I'm already accustomed to a certain way of life. And when I hit New York, I kind of freak out.
Mm.
And I was born there. So, and I wish I could understand, or you could help me understand what motivates the organization to acquire the independence of Puerto Rico when they don't actually live there and they're not living what Puerto Ricans are actually going through. Um, but I find that interesting. I would like to understand, what makes or motivates the members to go after independence. Because honestly, in my humble opinion, I think it would be disastrous because of a lot of reasons, and one of them is because we've been under U.S. rule for over 100 years, and it's already embedded in our culture. Uh, a lot of American things that we've picked up over the years. Even though when they first got here in 1898, they tried to shove English down everybody's throat. It
Yeah.
didn't work out because Spanish still stayed as the name language. But we picked up a lot of things that are the United States of America, and so I would like to understand that. What
Yeah.
what makes you want to go after independence for for
I
for, for Puerto Rico?
Myself and Coco could definitely probably answer this question, but I actually would like for you, Miran, to answer
Mm,
this question because Miran is somebody who really like uh aligns with the values of Hoopy, and she just hasn't had a chance to become a member, but like, when that happens, it's gonna happen, you know what I'm saying? But like you like
absolutely.
really fuck with the things that we do, and you also are from Puerto Rico but are living in New York now. So I feel like you would be a really good person to answer this question.
Yeah. Um, I don't know, it's really there because I was listening to you, profe. Can I call you profe?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah. I was listening to you, profe, talking about like tú eres PPD and li like experiencing Puerto Rico versus experiencing New York and like how Hoopy is mostly like kids that grew up here with like Puerto Rican heritage and are invested in it and how
Mhm.
they get into it. And I kind of have the same question because honestly, besides people from Hoopy, like I came here when I was 17 because of Maria. Um, and a lot of my experience with like diasporicans outside of Hoopy and a couple other exceptions has been that they're like as harmful, if not more harmful, than like white gringos that come in y se aprovechan de la ley 60 and they buy property. Like I've met that type of Puerto Rican who's like second and third generation and not the type to actually give a fuck about their heritage, but it's just like the relationship that they have to Puerto Rico is more of a commodity-esque relationship because it's probably somewhere they just grew up going to on vacation and never, whether that was like their own thing or like through their parents or their grandparents, just weren't taught to actually like pay attention to what was happening and learn enough about the culture and care. And then they start vacationing in Puerto Rico, and as soon as they make money, they buy property in Puerto Rico because, of course, the tax breaks, and they can take advantage of them as well. And like, but then they'll play the, well, like my grandparents are Puerto Rican, and like, I have a card, even though they're also not taking the time to like actually ingrain themselves and like reconnect to their homeland, like their ancestral homeland. And yeah, I've had a lot of experiences with Puerto Ricans in New York like that. So for me, it's also like, I think that's why I fuck with Jupi so much. I'm like, oh my God, there's people that grow up here and they're still like, they care, like they're conscious of their heritage and they care about it. And for me, I don't know, like I grew up on the island, and I think my parents, like the more I think about it now, especially with this election season, the more I'm like, yeah, I don't feel like my parents taught me that much about like the politics on the island. I think I remember being in like third grade, and we had like a voting practice and everybody was voting for like who was it? It was Coño, se me fue el nombre. Fortuño. It was when Fortuño was winning. And all the kids in third grade are like, everybody's voting for Fortuño. There was one kid who voted for Rogelio. I don't even remember what party Rogelio was, but we didn't even know anything about parties. And we were already just like, oh, yay, Fortuño, or yay, whoever the hell was the PNP or the PPD or any other candidate at the time. And I think a lot of us on the island grow up a little bit like that, where it's like we don't even know about the party. I didn't learn enough about the parties until I moved away, and I had to know it for my own.
Excuse me, there's a word for that over here. It's called fanatismo. It's all about
Exacto,
being a
sí,
fan of a party.
fanatismo, cool. Pero yo misma lo recuerdo y yo soy alguien que me considero que mis padres, o sea, yo tengo padres muy conscientes que me enseñaron a pensar y me enseñaron a analizar todas estas cosas. Y hasta ellos, they were just like, well, at least my mom's a Dominican immigrant, so is my dad, but he's been a citizen for like 30 years, so my dad does vote, and it was always just like, who's papi voting for? This one? Okay, cool. Um, I think I went off on like a really big tangent and I kind of forgot why I was even pointing this out before I went to answer the main question. Maybe that's an ADHD thing. Rogelio was part of what?
The Puerto Rico for Puerto Ricans party.
I don't even remember that party.
Was there that part?
That's how you grew up, like there. Huh?
There was a party that the Puerto Rican.
It didn't last too long.
It didn't last long, right, Tato?
That's the party that used to use a little
The
coquille as
coquille,
its
the brown
icon.
coquille as the logo.
Yeah, it was like an orange thing. Yo me acuerdo de eso.
Diablo,
So
pues.
I learned the new word today. Thank you, Miranda. It's diasporican. Diasporican.
Diasporican.
Oh, come on. Come
I swear
on,
to
Kenny,
God.
man.
I
Is
Come
that a
on,
thought
man.
thing?
Really,
I didn't even
really.
know that was
I'm
the word. Diaspora.
I'm about to take your New Eureka ID card away.
Ah,
Okay? I'm about to take that away. I mean,
yo soy
do you not know
puertorriqueño. Yo no soy
do
New
you not
York.
know? You're telling me you're from the Lower East Side. I know you for a long time. You never heard the poem Ode to the Diasporican.
I swear to God, I never heard it.
Get out of here, man.
You know what? You know what? What poem I'm proud that I learned? Y tu abuela, ¿dónde está?
Okay.
Eso es
All
viejo,
right.
eso sí que es viejo.
And you
Eso
don't know,
Eso yo lo
does
aprendí aquí.
anybody else know? Does anybody else know that poem?
No,
To the
I don't know. But the reason I know is
No
because
one.
my grandmother is black. Puerto
Yeah,
Rican
but
black. Well, you know.
got you. But you're talking about the diaspora. I hear a lot of diaspora. I'm
What
sorry
is
that
it
I cut
called?
in. Ode to the Diasporican.
All right, I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna look it up.
And I'm shocked that you don't even heard
All
of
right,
that.
you don't have to make me feel bad now, okay? Thank
Okay.
you.
But
I'm sure
if
you
I
have
may,
something to say. Go ahead, Tato.
yeah, I don't have a lot of time. I thought this was earlier. I'm actually driving home. I pulled over so I can engage you guys a little more. But I guess I wanted to sort of echo on the original question. What is the mission and vision of the organization? I missed out a lot. I had a little bit of trouble with the audio. so I missed out, or maybe I missed out on some comments and some answers. But I did want to get a better idea what the mission and the vision of the organization is. What does it mean to be a member of the organization? I heard people, membership chapters, people who are not members. How do you become? What is membership? What does that mean? Um, and also, I and well, very pertinent. I think it's very important that I touch on that. So I wanted to also get from the people from the organization, the young folks, what is community? What does that mean? What is that? So
I think
I
Picho had
wanted to
the
know,
best.
yeah, so, exactly. So I wanted what are the goals or the mission and vision of the organization? What is the membership? Well, what does it mean to be a member? And what is community?
Who wants to take that? Coco? Bicho? Miranda's not.
Coco, you want to talk about membership and goals, and I can talk about community?
Yeah. So just to like quickly recap, what Bicho was saying earlier in terms of like the mission. So we are like trying to fight for an independent,
Puerto Rico. Yes.
yeah. Um, Currently right now we are a youth organization. So members are anyone between the ages of 18 to 35. And we're like really, like that is something that we really care about because of the fact that we know that we've had different like people who are involved in the pro-independence movement for centuries before us, and so we
He
recognize
says
that,
centuries.
or sorry, decades before. But in order to like continue on that like movement, we have to continue like passing that on to like each generation, and the youth is really important for that. We also know that like in the like elections that just happened, the youth were super important, like having the fact that Dalmau was even able like to be like, the like second most popular, like or the second most voted for party. Like the youth were really important in making that sort of like change happen. um and also we just like recognize in general like with what's going on in the world, like the youth have been like a driving like factor in making change in general, like what we've seen with like in Palestine, like a lot of universities had like encampments to sort of like protest what's happening in Gaza. So that's just something. And also on top of that, like we have been like really making sure that we do our research on what's going on, like making sure we understand what the conditions are, and we recognize that a lot of youth leave Puerto Rico because of the fact of like the current conditions, like the opportunities out there, the resources, and like a specific statistic that we that is just like something that has stuck with us is the fact that 28% of youth have left Puerto Rico in the years between 2010 and 2019. So we just like, so that's why we focus on youth. Um, and in order to like be a member, we sort of like have conversations with people about like what are their values, like what is their history with Puerto Rico, and kind of see like if they kind of align with us, and if they do, and if they're trying to like join and figure out how they want to get involved, then they would just like fill out an application, go through an orientation, and then kind of like jump into different committees that we have created for each of our chapters, which can be like education committee, can be like, solidarity committee, where we like work with other organizations from different nations that have their own struggles that are related to ours. In terms of the goals, we have a few goals that we sort of go through in our orientation. I can like go through them real quick, but
I think your main goal is Puerto Rican independence.
yes, right.
I kind of got that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to like also unite the diaspora. We recognize too that there are way more Puerto Ricans in the diaspora here in the States than there are in Puerto Rico itself. And so we understand like we're going to be like really important in terms of like figuring out like how do we all come together and unite as a divided nation to figure out how do we like better the conditions of our people no matter where we are, you know? So we want to build new chapters, like not just in Brooklyn and the Bronx, but like right now we have people reaching out to us in Ohio. We have connections with people in Florida, in Spain, even in California. Um, we're trying to like also launch campaigns to sort of like support with like the different issues that we're facing in our like different communities. So for example, the displacement campaign that I mentioned before, how do we address that? You know, I also mentioned solidarity. We like seek to like unite with other organizations that have struggles. So there's a few goals that we've mentioned, but yeah, so that's kind of like a little bit on the goals and how to be a member. Bicho, you want us to talk about,
Community.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, community is like a pretty broad thing to define because there's like so many ways that community manifests, you know? Like right now on this phone call, we're in community, you know, because we're dialoguing with each other and like trying to come to common grounds and like understand each other. Community can also be like the people that live on your block that you see every day and like interact with and like care about. I think when we think about community, like in all its many forms, the main form of community that we um we emphasize is like the Puerto Rican community. Even if it's like Puerto Ricans who don't agree with us, like they are still members of the community because ultimately what we know like exists within all Puerto Ricans is like a desire for um a Puerto Rico that like benefits what they want, you know, and like through conversations like these is like how we can establish what it is that we want as Puerto Ricans and like come to unities about that, you know? In Jupi, like the community that we get to involve ourselves with are folks who believe in independence like us, but that also doesn't mean that we don't exclude ourselves from Puerto Ricans who don't believe in that, you know? Like we do our best to like make sure that we interact with all types of Puerto Ricans so we can just have these types of conversations and like figure out what is our common ground and like work towards that common ground together. While also like maintain like what our principles are, you know?
Tato, I have a question. You've been, and as long as I know you, you've been an independista, right?
Um, I'm I'm pro-independence. I'm actually a nationalist, a member of the Nationalist Party. So yes, I'm pro-independence.
Is that the
I would like to
macheteros?
see the no, well, no.
No.
Um, I know you for a long time, Kenny. Didn't realize how much you don't know about Puerto Ricanness.
That's why.
You
That's
know a
why
lot
I
about
interviewed John here.
I've just yeah. Um, the Nationalist Party basically, our core value is nationalism. We believe in Puerto Rico as a nation. And it's traditionally a Republican ideal party. We believe in the Republic of Puerto Rico and creating the Republic of Puerto Rico. Within nationalism, there are different types of philosophies and beliefs. I would say that since the 1960s, the dominant philosophies tend to be more socialist, more left wing, but that's not all that encompasses in within nationalism. I myself consider myself very neutral. I come from a very leftist background, Marxist Leninist, with a little red book in my pocket. Um, and so, but I find myself more in the center of things, more in the neutral. And when it comes to politics and political philosophies, I do believe in Republican ideals. I consider myself a conservative. So if I start speaking in a lot of ways, I may sound a lot like Donald Trump. But my nation and it's different than his. And so that would be the big difference. Um, so yeah, I've been a pro-independence probably all my life. My parents are very Puerto Rican, especially on my mom's side. Everybody's very Puerto Rican and very active politically and culturally. Um, So yeah, I would like to see Puerto Rico be its own free, sovereign, independent republic. Indeed.
So here's my question, and I think this question I answered it already, but here's my question: do you see
Uh,
Puerto Rico ever becoming independent?
I think it's very possible. I think that's just a matter of defining what the independence is going to be,
Okay.
and that's going to be dependent um, on, of course, the political environment of the world, and that's changing very quickly, very rapidly, and in ways that we sometimes can't even understand. So I think that I would like it to be. I would like to believe, and I do believe that it could happen within my time, um, because I see in what's happening politically in Puerto Rico right now, I see a big possibility of it happening not so much by our own doing an organization and activism, but because I think the United States is ready to let go in a lot of ways. Not 100%. I don't think we're going to see, unless there's a change, and I hate this, unless there's a change of affiliation or dominance, meaning that we could literally, and this is something I say to people all the time, and people think it's funny, but it can happen. We could literally see a replacement of the American flag for Chinese flag here. That can happen. Things like that can happen. So what independence is going to look like for us really is going to be dependent on the world scene, and also on how I think the new generations like yourselves manage to create community. Community to me, it's literal, it's unity in common, and it's produced and maintained by communication and communion. That's what generates and maintains community. Without communication and communion, there is no community. So that when you talk about Puerto Rican community, now you have to define what being Puerto Rican is, which is something that I think that is very lightly defined. I think that it's something that doesn't carry a lot of weight with most people. It's just I'm Puerto Rican because my pops is Puerto Rican, or my grandfather was Puerto Rican, and I like salsa and I eat pasteles on Christmas Eve. So
Coquito,
that's
coquito.
I think that yeah, the coquito. Um, the fight, the what we have in our hands, what I think what the new generation could really, the fight that they can really take on and carry out, it's cultural. It's 100% cultural, and it is about very strictly related, very directly related to generating and maintaining community. Um, I believe that a strong community is the most powerful thing we can have, and the key element of community is culture. And since I mentioned that word 3 times, I'm going to ask. That's my next question. What is culture? I want to know what the young people, especially, think about culture. What is culture, and what is the role of culture in all of this? Anybody?
I think that's a great question. Um, I think culture is um a set of customs that unites a group of people. Um, and I think that it's culture like is not only like a a noun, but I think it's also like a verb because you can't just like uh have culture, like you have to like act culture. You know what I mean? Like culture for Puerto Ricans is like speaking Spanish in a certain way and like playing bomba, or like culture for Puerto Ricans is also being afraid to talk about independence because it was criminalized for so long. I think like it's very easy for us to like identify what is the things that make a Puerto Rican culture. And I think just in general, culture is like what unites a people because of their regular practices.
Um, I want to add to that. I also think it's like a shared history that contributes to the way that you sort of like exist in the world too. Um, and I think that the question that you brought up earlier, John, about the fact that we don't live in Puerto Rico but are wanting independence is a valid question. because our experience is different. Yet, if we go back and we think about the history, like there was a shared history at a certain point, and we eventually like migrated, and more often than not, it wasn't because of we wanted to, you know. And I think that that is something that, you know, at least I can speak for myself, and I know a lot of people who are part of the org like feel like a resentment towards the fact that we like don't live in our home right now, or like whenever we go back, like we feel this like strong connection, like, oh, like we a lot of us eventually want to go back to this place that our families had to leave, you know. And we think about like why did we have to leave, and you talking about this history that we have with the US that's made it so that if we were to become independent, like what the hell would happen next, you know what I mean? Like we're at a point where um there's so many like laws that make us dependent, or like bills that have been passed that make us dependent on the US. And like the fact that right now people are still suffering under US rule and government, it's like what the hell, like this is not it. You know, like it has to be something else. And um you know, I think that that's what I think about in terms of culture, is like this shared history that has like contributed to the way that we exist. And like even though I don't live there, I want to learn as much as I can about it because I don't want to be disconnected from it. You know, that's my roots. And
Okay, sorry.
yeah,
But
and
well, you've made a very valid point, and I agree with you in everything that you just said because I've been through that also. Like I said before, I was born and raised in New York. I came out here at the age of 27, and I've been living here since. And I've lived both sides. Um, I find your group interesting, and I admire the fact that there's a generation coming up that actually cares about what's going on. I might not agree with the mission, which is clearly independence, but that's just a personal opinion of mine. But as far as culture, I can say that I see the Puerto Rican culture is it's gonna keep evolving, and we're gonna end up like what we see in present day Italians. Their ancestors came from Italy. They all spoke Italian, and they had a way of doing things. But the new generations don't speak Italian anymore. They just speak English. They've been totally Americanized. That's been happening with the Puerto Rican culture also. My mom moved from Puerto Rico to New York in 1963 because she had to. She had to find work. And that's the main reason, like you just said, that's the main reason why thousands and thousands of Puerto Ricos in the 40s and 50s moved to the States. And I'm a product of that. And that's why I was born over there. I had to go to sort of a transformation when I moved here. There were a lot of things I couldn't understand. I felt really uncomfortable. I didn't fit in at the beginning until years go, they start going by and you kind of get the hang of how things work over here. Uh, One of the things I notice about the Puerto Rican culture here es lo que se llama el apadrinaje. And that means you have to have, hay un dicho que dice, si no tiene, no se va a
Padrino no se
bautizar si no
bautiza.
tiene padrino, right? And that's true. And that's like
Can you
in,
say that
in our
again? 'Cause
DNA
I
over
didn't
here.
hear. I
Si
didn't hear that.
no,
I didn't hear that.
si no tiene padrino, no te bautiza. Without a godfather, you're not getting baptized.
Exactly. And how that works over here is for everything that when you need to solve a problem, mira, tú no sabes quién trabaja allá en la oficina, qué sé yo, qué.
Eso
They
se
don't try
llama
to do
pala,
things like the
pala.
legal, through the procedure. They try to find a shortcut. Who do I know
Que
that
se llama
works
una
there who can
pala,
hook me up? And that's for everything.
una pala. Yeah, it's a
Una pala,
pala.
aquí
It's
las
what we
palas,
call
sin
a pala.
pala,
A
está bien
shovel.
jodido aquí. And that's the way it's been. And that's something that I believe that it moves a society into what is corruption. And we have a lot of that, here. And that's happening even if we have the feds watching, and the FBI watching all the politicians and everybody. Y todos los meses se llevan a uno preso because that's like normal now, you know. So imagine if we were independent. I think it would be a disaster just because of that point. Because we're not used to governing ourselves and watching ourselves. We've always had Big Brother, Uncle Sam over there watching over us, which I don't say it's a good thing. It's not, because it's created certain situations that make us who we are, para bien o para mal. But I see the next generations of Puerto Rico, they're gonna keep distancing themselves from what's a Puerto Rican on the island and what's a Puerto Rican in the States. And that's just going to happen over the years. I mean, I already see it happening. And that's why I admire that there's a bunch of people in New York that actually care, and they want to do something, and change things. And I hope that their mission is to better the lives of the people here that live on the island. Because,
Absolutely.
I believe honestly, and I don't mean this and with no disrespect, but a person cannot know what's going on in a place and try to change it if they're not living it and they're not going through it on a daily basis. I find that very difficult. And como se dice, the intentions are great. It's a good intentions, but maybe the intentions shouldn't be not so much towards acquiring independence, but trying to help people in other ways with basic needs that they need now, and that probably with independence they won't ever see. Porque aquí en Puerto Rico hay mucha pobreza. You have to go al monte, al medio de la isla. Ahí es que tú te vas a encontrar con la gente pobre de verdad. You have to go around to certain places. Just like they say,
You
la
don't have to
isla es la
leave the no
isla
no.
y San
You
Juan es
don't
San
have to
Juan.
leave the city. You don't have to leave the city to see poverty. You can see
Mm,
poverty in Santurce and Rio Piedras. You see people in the streets. You don't
También,
have to
exactly.
actually. Yeah. I don't have a lot of time left, so I'm gonna touch on the topic that I wanted to talk about with my question, which was about culture and community. Um, I um I do agree that Puerto Ricans in general, especially on the island, are don't see themselves as capable of self-governance, of independence. That's just colonized mentality. That's just what it is. We just don't, in general, the population that doesn't see something that's never experienced. So it's very difficult for people to imagine independence. What does that mean to be out on your own, to depend on your own, to not have these federal assistance or all these supposed benefits that we get from the current status quo. And doesn't also we don't see how much resources are actually extracted from the island, um, and that whatever comes in is not an act of charity. It's not because people making a killing here. They're making big bucks in Puerto Rico. A lot of money is being made here, not by us, not by us. I wanted to talk about culture quickly and give you my definition of what culture is. Um, give you a little background. I was born here in Puerto Rico at the age of 13. I moved to the States, like many families, all eight of us, my mom, my dad, six kids, to the Bronx. That was 1984. So it was culturally a big, very significant era, and a big culture shock for me because yo soy un jibarito de aquí del campo, and I ended up in the Bronx from one day to the next. So that was the 1984 was the height, as you guys can remember, of the crack epidemic, of AIDS, but it was also when things like hip hop and things like freestyle and things like that were being generated, and breakdancing and a lot of other cultural elements, traits that we may or may not recognize Puerto Ricanness in them today, but that we definitely were part of that. Um, Culture to me is a living thing. I happen to be a cultural anthropologist. That's what I went to school for. I currently work as an archaeologist, but I consider myself a cultural worker and a musician. Culture to me is something that is alive. It's a living thing. Culture is the same thing that gives you bread, that gives you wine, that gives you beer, that gives you kombucha, that gives you cheese. You cannot have any of these things without culture. And like I think the brother mentioned earlier, the young brother, it's something you consciously cultivate. You know, something it's not it doesn't come out of nowhere. Culture is that. That's why the root word of culture is cult. It's a cult of identity. It's a cult to who you are. That's a culture thing, and it is a conscious process. But the culture itself is not what we often call cultural elements, which are actually cultural byproducts, like la bomba y la plena, la arroz con gandules, los pasteles, la música jíbara, all that stuff, la salsa. Those are cultural byproducts. Those are things, material culture that the culture produces. The culture itself is us. The culture is the living beings that are part of that, that are cultivated. That's why when culture is something that is consciously cultivated, consciously taken care of, and consciously
Transfer.
manipulated in other ways. And it requires, in order to have a culture, you require an environment, And when you think of culture in the chemistry, right, or lab work, you think about a petri dish, and that's where you create a culture. When you and well, if you're gonna make beer, if you're gonna make wine, if you're gonna make cheese, you need to bread. You need to create a culture, and that's what a culture really is. It's the living aspect of it, not the cultural byproducts. Those change. Language changes, customs change, traditions change, food changes, the music we listen to and dance to change. What doesn't change is the people that are generating that. Okay, and that, I don't want to say that has I don't want to use words like biology, but there is a strong biological aspect to culture, whether we like to see it. There's a social and there's a biological aspect, which is inevitable when you have people interacting, communing, and communicating in community all of the time. I think, and I want to leave you guys with this: the 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 struggle, the fight is cultural. It's about identity, and it's about self knowledge. It's about knowing who you are and where you come from. I hear the enthusiasm of the young folks here, and I can't help but remember myself 20, 30 years ago in New York when I was part of the Puerto Rico collective. Which, when I hear you guys talking, it's almost a flashback to when I was in my 20s in New York. What we had a group called the Puerto Rico Collective. Um, from that, other groups came out. We worked very closely with all the other pro-independence groups and the elder folks at that time. Now we are in that elder category. Um, from there, I passed on to the Nationalist Party in New York. I was sworn into the Nationalist Party in New York. I'm actually a sworn member since maybe 20 years ago. And I think that if I want to leave you with anything, is that the struggle is cultural. It's community. It's building community, Puerto Rican community. Um, I don't know if this is the right comparison, but when I think of, for example, Jews in the United States, and I know that's a very loaded topic. I remember riding the train in New York, especially like you would ride the Metro North, like if you're going, out of state or in and out. And Jews can recognize each other from one side of the train car of the other without even speaking. By the way, they dress, by the way, by certain things. And whenever they do establish communication, and I saw this many times, the first thing they asked each other was, "How's the community there?" Once they knew where you're from, people would say, "And how's the community there?" And you know what they're talking about. They talk about the community. I heard the professor speak about how Puerto Ricans are, and the word for that is assimilation, and he used the comparison to Italians. The Italians chose what in sociological terms, Patrick Moynihan and Grayson called nearing the Anglo-Saxon center, which they chose to become whiter and whiter and leave behind a little bit of, they literally biologically became whiter, what when Puerto Ricans and Dominicans call blanqueando la raza, and also maintain some cultural identity, but are very Americanized. But that's not the case with every group in the United States. I'll give you another example that you can find them next to each other in New York and are very different are the Greeks. I mentioned the Jews, but I think we all know how the Jews roll. but I think we could also look at the Greeks. And the Greeks, there was a point in the Puerto Rico collective when we were thinking about doing something called the Puerto Rican Sunday School, because we were going to model it after what the Greeks do with their children. Their children go to church and then they go to Greek school. They learn their language, they learn their history, they learn their customs, they learn their tradition. So that's very important. You know that you learn who you are and where you come from. Also, so you don't repeat a lot of the mistakes that the young lords made when they were your age, thinking they could come to Puerto Rico from the diaspora and preach about
Yeah.
liberation. Not having a communication, establish a communication, which is different today. I I do recognize that since Hurricane Maria to now, the connection with the diaspora is different. I've always lived in two different worlds. Like I said, I moved to New York when I was 13. Actually born, literally a born again New Eurekan. I have a certificate of baptism. I was baptized in the New Eurekan Poets Cafe by the late Reverend Pedro Pietri. So I'm actually consider myself New Eurekan because I got to New York thinking that I was Puerto Rican, and then folks born outside of the island weren't Puerto Rican. You were New Eurekan, and you couldn't speak about Puerto Rican things. That was my perspective. My perspective is that I was an island-born Puerto Rican, as Puerto Rican as you can get, and no one who wasn't born here could talk to me or even engage in the topic of Puerto Ricanness. As I grew up in New York and finished growing up and forming myself in New York, I learned my history. I learned that the Puerto Rican flag was designed and adopted in New York. I learned that Lamento Americano was written in New York. I learned that most of the cultural byproducts or cultural elements that we hold dear were really developed by the diaspora. And I came to a point where I realized that the diaspora has a lot of power, has a lot of potential to liberate, not just liberate Puerto Rico, but also to heal a toxic culture and to regenerate our community. Because you can give me tomorrow the United States or people here could say, look, Dalmau won and now we're going to have the Republic of Puerto Rico. It changes nothing because, like the brother mentioned before, the corruption and all the other things are part of the culture. So it's about healing our culture. And healing our culture can only happen by going back to community. And that's identity and knowing who you are. If you don't know who you are, you're always going to be making the same mistakes. And you're not going to be able to connect with the people that are like you. Um, and I really have to go. But I want to put myself out there for you guys, especially young guys that are doing this work. I want to look more into your organization. If I could connect you guys with people in New York and in the island, let me know. I am very, active still with the, nationalist movement. I actually was in charge of the nationalist youth and in New York when I was living there. One of the things that I was in charge of and did every year. We did a pilgrimage to Lares every year for the Grito, and we make sure that we brought Puerto Rican youth to sort of an experience, sort of a retreat and an experience that was also part of the requirements from eventual membership. But that's something, that if you're interested, we could talk about. But if you have any questions for me, um, you got like 5 minutes because I really got to go.
I don't have a question, but I do want to respond to a couple of things.
Yes, sir.
Um, First of all, I want to say thank you, Tato, for everything you just said because I think it was great for you to like ground us in this understanding of what culture is. Um, because it for me like put some things into perspective, and it made me think about also with what Profe has said about corruption existing in Puerto Rico, how culture is something that is also learned, right? And I think that the bad culture that we have as Puerto Ricans is a byproduct of the economic system that we've been forced to live under, right? Capitalism is something that makes a lot of greed happen because in order to thrive in this system, you have to be greedy. You have to like beat somebody in order to make a dollar. And I think that in Puerto Rico, a lot of the politicians that we've been forced to like deal with historically have had a lot of corruption because they have been so affiliated with the desires of the United States. So that's just one thing I wanted to say. The other thing I wanted to say is that us as Jupi, we aren't organizing without being intentional about understanding what our history has been. And so I say that to say that I don't want it to be us to be misconstrued as like another set of youth that doesn't know their history, because we do spend a lot of time studying what the Puerto Rican movement has gone through and also what has Puerto Rico gone through outside of the movement for independence. So we're very aware about like what the Young Lords have did. We are very understanding of how the PRRWO, the Puerto Rican Revolutionary Workers Association, and the Puerto Rican Socialist Party had a lot of disagreements in the way they understood how the diaspora should participate in the movement for independence. Um, and I think something that's really inspiring me right now is how Lolita Ron's birthday was 2 days ago. And we got to watch the interview that she did after she got out of jail. And in that interview, she talks about how independence is not something that she's fighting for because it's like her personal goal. She's fighting for it because she knows that it is what the Puerto Rican people need. And the reason why the Puerto Rican people need independence is because without it, there is no way to get out of the greed that the United States has created, the repression that the United States will continue to emit against the Puerto Rican people, and also the corruptness, like you were saying, Profe, that exists in Puerto Rico without independence. And I think that in her time when she was thinking about it, she was also thinking about it from a socialist perspective because in that interview, she had said that she was a socialist. And I think that what that really touches on is the idea that in order to achieve the Puerto Rico that we all deserve, there is a huge cultural change that has to happen. This idea that Puerto Ricans in politics are corrupt is an idea that we have to change through the organizing that we do towards this ultimate goal. And I think that one way that it happens is through the youth, because if we look at like historically how the youth has contributed to society, the music that we all listen to comes from the youth. A lot of the trends that like are created, whether or not folks like agree with them, come from the youth. The new like what's it called? Like ambition for like Puerto Rican independence or Puerto Rican change comes from the youth. This election that passed was like an example of that. Um,
Hold on one second, Bicho. Let me just say something. Tato,
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Tato, give me 5 more minutes. Que Alejandro wants to say hello to you.
Okay.
He's gonna jump on now. Or he's just texting me. He's gonna come on now.
But yeah,
All right.
that was
Which
basically like
Alejandro?
Alejandro from Loisaida. Alejandro
Oh,
Epifanio.
nice. Yeah, yeah, Ale. Yeah.
You know Ale. Let me text him now, right?
but that was basically my piece. And I appreciate you, Tato, for also extending the hand to connect us to people, stuff like that. Um if you want to put like your phone number in the chat or something, I could like take your number, one of us could
Oh,
take your number.
sure. If not, you can get my contacts from Kenny.
I bet.
He's allowed to give you guys my permission. If you can also find me, like, Instagram or whatever. My what's my thing? Tato Brujo. You can find me as Tato Brujo.
I got you.
Yeah, just one last thing. Like we like also recognize the importance, like Bicho had said earlier, of just like learning about our history and what has already been done, and like use as somebody who's lived both in Puerto Rico and in New York and has just like been involved in this kind of work for years now, like wanting to connect with us because we want to learn basically like what your experience was too. Because I didn't know there was something called the Puerto Rican Collective.
Puerto Rico Collective. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
in the mid '90s, throughout the whole '90s, really.
yeah.
Um, and many of the people who were members of the Puerto Rico Collective actually are still very active. All that I can remember went on to do great things, and many of them are very much key players and influencers today. In a broad spectrum, you'll have people who are working in government, people who are completely the opposite of that. The Puerto Rico Collective was mostly a group of, we were all college students at the time. We all sort of identified each other as having common or like-minded, we were as being like-minded from coinciding a lot in the protests or in the events and we would sort of started recognizing each other. We were the young people. We were the people that the elders didn't let speak on the table, or were upset when we kept emphasizing that everything good came from the youth. Um, so we just decided at some point to create to organize as an organization. Valga redundancia eso. And and basically we became a work group. We didn't have a philosophy. We were open. All you needed to do was believe in and be willing to work towards Puerto Rican independence and Puerto Rican culture. And we would have meetings, and if you came in with an idea, and two or three other people were down to go ahead and make it happen, that's how it worked. It became a committee, it became a work thing. So I think the Puerto Rico Collective wasn't documented enough. I don't think you'll find a lot of information about it, documentation. We actually didn't take a lot of time calling attention to ourselves. We didn't really have a lot of social media. Didn't exist back then to the level that exists now, and we were more. But in retrospect, I think and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think actually it was a good thing that we didn't pay a lot of attention, and we didn't spend a lot of resources in publicity or in public relations. On letting people know this is who. Oh, we're here. This is who we are, and we're doing this. No, we actually, a lot of times people didn't even realize that we had organized the events, that we organized the gatherings, or that we have brought all the organizations together, and things just happen. And I'm glad I'm talking about this now because something I hadn't really even thought about. But the Puerto Rico Collective, I think, was successful because it also knew when to stop existing. At some point, and I'll tell you this because you should know, you probably already know it, but you should know it. At some point, we felt we were being infiltrated. At some point, we felt we were being, we always knew, and you should always know that you're always being watched and you're always being listened to. And everything you do on your computer and your phone, they know. Everything, everything. Don't sleep on that. Once you decide to take this political path, so at some point, things got complicated, weird, and suspicious, and we just, very automatically, this organization will self-destruct in 5 minutes, and that's how it happened.
Te veo.
Yeah, that's how it was, man. But we did a lot, and now I'm curious whether there is some documentation about what the Puerto Rico Collective did. We worked very closely with the Nationalist Party, with the Socialist Party, with a lot of the Independence Party, and a lot of local organizations in New York. There were still a lot of those social clubs like Toñitas. That's probably the last of its kind, but we worked a lot with those. We worked a lot with all the hubs of Puerto Rican culture that we could identify. You know, everything. The casitas movements, that was my thing. Murals, we did the Puerto Rico Collective. Probably the most famous mural we did, which I actually painted the original version of that, is the Albizu and Che mural on Inner Fifth Street. That was a Puerto Rico Collective project. And probably a lot of the murals that are still up in El Barrio and some in Loisaida were originally um, um, somehow generated directly by the PRC. So yeah.
So I wanna say hello to what happened to Ale. I just saw him. Ale se fue. Alejandro, I can't hear you. You're muted.
I'm here representing El Barrio.
Oh, you're representing El Barrio.
Tato knows, Mixta Gallery.
Ay, quiero está ahí. ¿Ese no es Ale?
No, Ale está escondido.
Este es Guarico.
Barrio Next.
Mira Guarico ahí.
Mira, I want to say,
Está hecho.
I want to say that to give you an example of what Tato was talking about with the Jewish people. All I have to do is say to Tato, "Are you still traveling?"
Always traveling, always in search of life, brother.
There
Always
you
going.
go. See, so we know each other, in certain words and stuff, and that's what basic culture is as well. Like I can meet a Puerto Rican in the middle of Russia, and the moment you open your mouth, they'll know, basically, coño, este tipo parece he's from the Boquerón region, right? So, and I think that's really a good thing to do. Um, any
I
more
think signs
questions?
of recognition are important. A
Yes.
big part of culture, big part of culture. A strong culture has signs of recognition. You know, a strong culture, people in a strong culture know how to recognize each other, engage, communicate, and that is literally, distinguishes you from other things. That's what makes you different. And it's what encompasses all the lowest common denominators of who we are. ¿Tú estás en Loisaida, Guarico?
Yeah, él está en Loisaida.
Yeah, this is
Sí,
Loisaida.
sí, está en el sótano.
This is the shop. This is the wood shop. So
Yeah, they got a
Pero
woodshop here, fancy.
tú te
No,
mudaste del Bronx para allá.
I'm like you. I've been living everywhere.
Ah,
Ah, bueno, ya hace
I,
20 años que estoy en el mismo sitio ya.
I, tra-
Pero,
I travel a lot.
mira ahí,
Ahora,
Ale,
mira,
míralo ahí,
oye,
míralo ahí.
aquí.
qué
Oye,
buena
Ale,
vida.
saluda a la gente, Ale. ¿Qué pasó?
¿Cómo estás, Tato?
¿Qué pasa, papi? Bien. Bueno verte.
Igualmente,
¿Y
bro.
qué? Sí,
Ya
sí,
tú sabes,
está buena compañía ahí.
lo sé, lo sé. Llevo esperando por este man aquí por años.
Sí, lo sacaste del Bronx.
Él se salió solo. Ahora está en Queens,
Ah,
en Loisaida.
En
ah,
Loisaida.
caramba.
Mira, the young kids are getting bored. So I want to
Yeah.
bring up somebody.
I have a question. Guaro, ¿tu mamá está haciendo bandera todavía?
Yo,
Ok, pues, pero está bien de salud.
dentro de todo, I send you the contact.
Qué bueno. No, yo tengo el número de ella, pero quería saber si estaba activa.
Yeah, yeah.
Siempre,
Estamos.
brother.
So
Sí, sí.
Miss Miranda made a statement in one of in the movie night, I think it was, where she said that they're not teaching, and this is a question for Profe, that they're not teaching Puerto Rican studies in Puerto Rico schools. Something like that, Miss
They never
Miranda?
have.
Miss Miranda
They
Barely.
never
Flavia.
have. They never have.
Yeah. Like I think I remember in like fifth grade. I also switched schools a lot, but I remember in fifth grade I was at like el American Military, a los que lo conocen, esa mierda de escuela.
Yeah.
Y fifth grade, and what we learned was like just about the Tainos, very glossed over. Not like the colonial history, and then I don't think I took like an actual Puerto Rican history class, especially because even if they do give it to you, no te hablan claro. And I was fortunate enough to have one teacher when I was in 11th grade that taught us like actual Puerto Rican history and actual like the truth of like United States history and how it's tied to us as well. And yeah, that was like an awakening for me in like 11th grade. Siempre he sido independentista like on principle, but yes, Puerto Rican studies probably had like 2 years worth of it. 2 years, 2 very watered down years
What do you
throughout
think,
my
John?
whole like K through 12.
Well, what she's saying is true. She used a word I was gonna actually use, which is watered down. Books obviously are published by American companies. They're edited by American book companies, and that basically happens in the states too. Because history, in when I went to high school in the '80s, I mean, when they talked about what the African American experience, they watered it down too. It was very superficial, and they kind of lo contaban con pinza. They had to be careful what to say, and they didn't. No te hablan claro, like she just said. The same thing. Well, the same thing happens here. You don't get to really
Can't
learn
depend on the
about.
government to educate your kids. You
Yeah,
can't
that's
depend on
the
the
US
government to
thing.
educate your kids. You can't depend on the government to educate your children. That's not their job.
Exactly,
That's
because
not their
what they
interest.
want to do is
And
keep everybody.
Yeah, they want us
the
to
only
be
reason,
dumb.
the
They
only
keep us
reason that
dumb so
public
that we
education
don't
exists is because there are laws against child labor. Because your children are not allowed by law to go to work in a factory. That's the only reason there's a public education system. It's not because they want to educate you. And the American education system, which the Puerto Rican education system is based on, it's a tracking system. It's a tracking system. It's going to track you depending on who you are, where you come from, what your last name is, your economic background. It's going to track you somewhere. If your public system is tracking you to either the military or to jail or to some factory work, that's a tracking system. You can't trust and you can't expect the government to educate your children ever. So,
That's definitely. And over here, it's
I
been the same
personally
thing.
homeschooling my own, and I don't really, think that sending your kids to school at all, it's a good idea.
So my friend Jose gave me a hey Mario, ¿cómo está? This is my friend Mario Chiclana. I don't know where he's on you. He's somewhere with a yellow shirt. Okay, so my friend Jose, which meets with us every Thursday, he's in the mountains somewhere shooting deer.
No beba
Um,
mucha agua.
no, who are you talking to?
It's Alejandro and these
Oh,
guys.
Alejandro. He suggested this book for me to get real Puerto Rican history.
Can you put that in the chat?
Um, there it is.
¿Cuál es el autor? Ah,
Federico Rivas Toval.
got you.
And just me reading the beginning part of it, it literally starts when the earth is formed. Does that make sense? Like he really wants everybody to know, okay, this is what happened. This is how the island became, and then whatever. And he tells you. And as I'm reading, I'm like my jaw is open. I'm like, wow, I can't believe it. It's a really good book. So if you really want to learn, in my opinion, of course, if you really want to learn about Puerto Rico stuff like that, even though Tato thinks I don't know anything about Puerto Rico, but that's a whole other story.
Um,
I haven't
I can
finished the book
open.
yet.
Don't make me talk. No make me talking.
Mira
But
lo-
I have to go. I have to excuse myself because I'm getting home now. Been a long day. But if you guys want to reach out, Kenny, you can give them my information, and
Yes.
I can give you guys lists of books, like a reading list that we use for the Nationals youth. The educational components of what we use for the Nationals youth in terms of articles, books. A lot of times we also have a lot of the books on PDF. So they're interested in stuff like that. We could definitely give you, and you, Kenny, anybody, a long list of books that we think every Puerto Rican should read. But with that, I leave you. It's a pleasure to meet the people that I just met today. Aquí a la orden, un saludo a los panas que hacía tiempo que no veía, a Guaro y a Ale. Espero
Take
verlos
care of yourself,
pronto.
brother.
Yeah,
Nice
brother,
to meet you,
travel safe.
Tato.
Yeah.
Pleasure here.
I,
Placer es
I also
mío.
have I also have to get going because I have company coming over.
Who's that?
That's me, Bicho.
Oh, okay. So are we done? I guess. Nobody has any
Yeah,
questions,
yeah, y'all
John?
can keep talking. I'm gonna get going.
No,
So
I'm just John. You have any?
No. I wanna thank you for the invitation. It was really interesting conversation. I learned a few things, and I'm just glad to have a moment to express my opinions on the subject. And I hope to see you guys, some other time.
I learned a lot on their first meeting. It was regarding the description of PIP, PPD, and what's the other one?
Ya.
And what?
Eso es una prueba de que no sabes mucho de la historia. Que
Hey, I can tell you everything about New York City. How's that?
sí, es bueno
Mira el
que
otro. Que vino de la isla, now working in New York City. Vete para atrás para la isla a trabajar.
later, y'all. Much love. Talk to y'all soon.
All right, Pete, just take care of yourself. Mario, ¿qué? This is the young organization Jupi, Juventud Unidos para Independencia. We had a whole conversation regarding their goals, their the diaspora. Supposedly, I don't know about that either, so I have to look up a poem about the diaspora. Yes, Bray.
Wanted to say to the three young people, thank you so much. And I got to tell you, you have a lot of courage. You really do. I was one of the progenitors of hip hop when it started. Nobody believed that it would last this long. I did. So I did a lot of fighting for it with rap. I developed clubs in high school that no other schools had. And we fought hard. And now I'm fighting for civil rights. throughout the country and put together a film festival for young people. And I wanted you to know that a lot of older people don't think that you are limited. We think you are the greatest minds alive, period. Because right now, you are in the prime of your life. You will never love stronger. You will never run faster. You will never be as great as you can be as a human being. And that's important to know because I'm telling you, you will do things that no one ever thought about before. And what the last thing that I was going to say is know your goals. Know your goals because you can look back at the past and say, this is where I came from, but then how am I going to make a difference so the future can change? And what does that future look like? So know what your goals are. That's really important. So, but thank you so much for having the courage to come on here and allowing us to be a part of your experience. And I mean, if you ever need anything or need any support or anything, just contact Kenny. He knows he has my information. We've been friends for 40 years. So,
Why you have to say that? I don't.
because you're old as shit, and I want everybody to know. So,
Hey, you're older than me by a month.
Yeah.
Everybody
I
knows.
just wanted to say, like, for everybody who joined the call, hi, I'm Coco. I'm part of the organization Jupi. But I also have to go. But I really want to thank you, Kenny, for putting this call together and bringing so many people. Like honestly, I also learned a lot. And I feel like one of the biggest takeaways that we've had like over the years as being a part of this organization is that like everything that you just said, Spray, like yes, 100% true. Like the youth is definitely gonna be like super important in terms of like making some change, but at the same time, like we can't like ignore everything that has happened before us. And so whenever we have the opportunity to connect with our elders, to connect with people who've been a part of this, throughout their youth and have had the knowledge passed on from their families, like we want to learn. We want to like walk side by side so that we don't make the same mistakes, so that we like continue the movement and like figure out like what are the next steps after everything that's been done like in history. So I really appreciate you bringing everybody together.
Absolutely.
But with that, I do have to go to, I'm already cocinando.
Miranda, no te vayas.
Diablo.
Oh.
Yo tengo hambre, pero está
Yo
bien.
tengo hambre también. I was going to call Domino's before the thing, and then you guys came on.
Hacho, llámalo ahora y llega en lo que
No.
terminamos la conversación.
No, que tengo que bajar la... Chacho, that Puerto Rican accent is spot on, not for
Está
nothing.
bien marcado, yo lo sé.
Exactly. Coco, thank you for coming. I really appreciate you,
Thanks for inviting me, Coco.
Thanks
and
for coming.
And I'm sure that everybody that was here on time, Alejandro, we learned a lot. Even Spray. Spray's not Puerto Rican, but
these guys are the witness that I was literally taking care of a meeting until 8 p.m. So
okay,
I really wanted to join. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I think again, I definitely 100%.
No, está bien. No te apures. No,
I agree with Coco. Thank you.
I believe you.
For doing this, okay?
I believe you, papi. I believe you.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Mario no llegó también a tiempo. Bye, Coco. Be safe.
Bye, Coco.
Miranda, when is your next movie?
En verdad que right now I don't have anything like that I'm working on. I'm just doing videography and like shows, but I am screening my film again at Loisaida, resulta, en Artiferio on the 7th.
What is that?
De Artiferio a fuego.
Sí. Yo he trabajado con Lucía, que es la productora, and I know a few of them. Yeah, it's basically just like a Caribbean Latinx artist, young artist.
What day is that?
December 7th. It's on a Friday. I think it starts at 6. And
the reason I ask is because I take, and Spray knows how adamant I am about this. I take every opportunity to try to get my daughter acting jobs. She graduated from ADA, the American Academy of Dramatic Arts.
Ay, qué duro.
And she's spot on perfect. But then again, I'm her father. You know what I mean?
Miranda, tú dijiste que era el 7, ¿verdad?
A las 6.
El 7 es sábado.
Ah, me confundo. Espérate. Ah, sí, es un sábado, perdón. Sí,
Yeah,
sí.
the 7th is Saturday. I have an event on the 6th.
Well,
Okay.
nobody invited you.
I'm going. I don't give a damn. Yo soy boricua, bro. Yo me meto donde sea. I don't give a
It's
Pa'
a
shit.
que
Saturday.
tú
It's a
sepas,
Saturday.
what is it? Yo soy boricua,
Para que
what
tú
is it?
lo sepas.
Pa' que tú lo sepas, yeah.
I'm a party crasher.
You're a party crasher. Más boricua no se puede encontrar que Marito. No se puede encontrar ni para nobody, you know?
Ah, bueno, pues estamos entonces con lo que estamos, lo que tenemos que estar.
He's another resource that I think you can use. You met him before, Ale.
A Mario, muy probable, muy probable.
No, you met him. You was just not in the right frame of mind that day. You were very stressed, and you asked me to do something.
That sounds like an everyday to me.
And the day that we went to remove the wire that we built in, and you yelled at me. Remember that day?
Oh yes, I do, man.
Yes, that's the guy who helped me remove the wire.
Please. I'm not gonna apologize. Fucking hate you, Kenny, for that.
Oh.
I'm kidding.
Why you hate me for that? We're gonna have one day we're gonna have a conversation, but not on Zoom because that's a whole other story.
All right, yeah, this
Johnny,
is
Johnny, you have anything to say? Let's gang up on Miranda. She's from Puerto Rico.
I'm good. I'm good. Like I said, I appreciate you guys having me and listening to my opinions. And like I said, I learned a lot of stuff, and it was good.
I like to say, John, did you notice that Miranda, for being born and raised over there, has perfect English?
Yeah, she
A whole
does.
nother.
Y
Yeah.
tiene el acento boricua, bien duro.
Bien duro, ¿verdad? Yeah.
Yeah.
Miranda is probably the second person that I met in my adult life from American Military Academy.
Oh, yeah?
The other person turned out to be, incredible filmmaker, photographer, perfect also English accent.
Ángel Manuel Soto.
No Soto. Es Melvin Audaz. I don't know if you know Melvin. Yeah, but anyway, the thing is that
How is Melvin?
It's the schools,
he's good. He's good. He's a father now. He's moved to Florida. But I did realize though when I met Melvin what a disservice it is. They like basically Melvin. I'm sorry, but the American Military Academy. It's horrible. Like, I don't know what they teach you guys there. I'm so sorry.
I mean, I was only there from like 2nd to 6th grade.
Okay.
Pero mis hermanas.
Uh-huh.
My family is also Dominican. Like, my parents are both from Dominican. My grandfather was Puerto Rican on my dad's side. Papi grew up kind of between the two, and then Mommy grew up in DR. Papi gets a job in PR, and they moved the family over to PR the year before I was born. So my sisters, like, they went to Baldwin, basically. They grew up in DR for a while, and then they went to PR. And when they went to PR, they were just in Baldwin. I moved around schools a lot. Y lo que ellas vivieron en Baldwin, 10 veces peor de lo que yo pude haber vivido en el American, que they're like right next to each other.
Yeah, me lo puedo imaginar. Si eso son escuelas completamente.
Lo que te meten en la cabeza en Baldwin es, like, English, y maybe, like, a dash of PR history, again, like, super watered down, and all they fed, like, what they feed them, because it's a college prep school, is, like, you need to leave. Like, you're not going to be worth anything. Si tú estudias en la Jupi, like, you need to get out of PR, because PR is not a productive place, like, and they just teach them to, like, not care. It's been a lot of unlearning, for them.
No, I really, like, admire you, like, and kind of formulating your own, thoughts as to, and that you're here is just a testament to yourself.
The military school is the one in Aguadilla, what used to be Borinquen base? No.
No,
Guaynabo.
They have Bayamón, y yo creo que hay dos más. I don't remember where, but I think it's...
Única, yeah, I know there's more, but I was just like at el American for a while.
So I'm glad Miranda's still there because there was I should have told Bicho when he was on. There was a question about Puerto Rico history, not telling the young people that where they killed ¿cómo se llama este? I just finished having the name. The guy that they killed at the captain they killed.
Taíno.
El taíno que mató el capitán, ¿cómo es? Salcido. Salcido.
Sí.
Right. So they
Que
said,
lo ahogaron.
right, and one of those days during the week, one of those guys says, do you know where Salcido was killed? Because we don't. And I was like, I know where Salcido was killed. I was going, yeah, I do. But then I realized I'm the oldest one out of all of the kids that were there, I'm the oldest one, so me quedé callado. They talk about the Grito de Lares. They didn't know about it. I was like, well, I know about that too, but déjame quedarme callado porque, You don't know where Salcido was killed?
I don't.
Really?
No.
Wow. En Añaco.
¿En dónde?
Añaco.
Set. Yo no lo...
Puerto
You
Rico,
know, I might have... Hold on, because I have a book that mentions it, and I might have just overseen that little...
Puerto Rico got too much history.
Too much history,
I'm
yeah.
pretty bad with locations in general, but let me...
Puerto Rico got too much history that they don't teach in schools. It's history. I mean, it's a little dark in history, but
yeah, no, that's why I told them this book. This book is good.
Yeah.
Son las herramientas del colonialismo.
Sí,
it is.
pasa aquí en Estados Unidos, la historia también en Estados Unidos.
Y la gente no se conoce su historia. Y en Estados Unidos yo siento que es como que es a donde va a llegar Puerto Rico si estamos más alejados, que es como... My sister and I were kind of talking about this. This is kind of a big tangent, but just like with the elections and how you see like people throwing rave parties and people like responding to the elections and they burn the flag and stuff. And my sister was talking about how like the US flag. And my sister was talking about how like nosotros no hacemos eso. Like we have a lot of problems with the government, pero nuestra bandera es algo que como
That's
que
it.
It's a pride.
exacto.
It's your heart.
Well, that
Pero
comes
es
from that
como
law,
que
the gag
pudiéramos
law.
llegar a estar así de desconectados del símbolo de nuestra bandera si seguimos como que a donde ha llegado Estados Unidos, que yo siento que la gente de Estados Unidos no se cría con ningún tipo de... No sé, yo no me crié aquí, yo llegué a los 17. But I feel like there's just this like disconnect because they haven't been taught their history for so much longer. Que es como que I don't know what US people are bound to, especialmente como que los gringos blancos, the really conservative ones in like empty ass states. I'm like, what are y'all? ¿Qué conexión tienen ustedes a anything? Like, are y'all connected to
La mentalidad imperialista.
Es que no tampoco tienen cultura, ¿entiendes?
Eso es lo que digo, no tienen ningún tipo de conexión a nada. Y es como que...
No hay cultura, no tienen cultura.
Bueno, la cultura es lo que son ellos.
Sorry, Spray. I know you're trying to catch the little words here and there, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
He's
used to it already.
But I know what you're saying, because I often think about that. What is true American culture? And what true American culture is,
Native American culture.
Americans come from Hispanic Americans, if you want to label us as such. The truth is too that, we have to also start changing language like we do in Spanish, right? With our binary language.
Sí.
In English, for example, like we have to stop saying that America is someone from the United States. Americans are all of us, when you think about it, and so
I say that too. I would I did my master's at NYU and like it was in media culture and communications. I could talk shit about NYU for fucking days, but I will spare you from that.
I used to work there, this piece of shit.
Pero hablábamos, yeah, it was fucking una mierda. We would have like class discussions about colonialism and stuff like that, just depending on the courses that I was at. And I've always, it doesn't roll off the tongue, pero yo también have always like thought of that distinction of like, I hate how like los estadounidenses, because in Spanish there's a word for it, estadounidense, and I think they get to capitalize on the word American, and then I'm like, I never want to use it to refer.
United States.
I say United Statesy, and it doesn't roll off the tongue right, and people look at you funny, but that's the freaking term. Like, make a name for yourself. You don't own the continent.
That's the weirdest thing. The weirdest coincidence right now. I wrote a play in 2012, and one of the songs that I wrote as a parody was about a Puerto Rican singing his pride to be in the Lower East Side, a Puerto Rican in the Lower East Side, and the song is called "The United Statesican."
Get the fuck out of here, Ken.
I
That's
swear to God,
Wow.
if I pull the original book, it's in the book.
Stacy Ken.
Yeah.
That's
called-
crazy.
And then he starts
Eso
singing
está
it.
más
I am
cabrón. Like,
and
New
he said,
York was right there, bro.
"Listen, no, but I'm just saying."
Tatos American.
Oh
It's
no,
a
because
Tatos American. Tato
si
la
Tato
vida.
me oye, me grita. Si Tato me oye, me
Exacto.
grita. No diga nada, no diga nada, porque no sé what
Probably
you say.
laugh and then slap you.
No, but the character, he's proud to be a United States citizen, right? But the way he says, "I'm proud to be United States," with a Puerto Rican
United
accent.
States.
United
The
States,
United States.
America. It's funny. It's a good song. But I just found it so weird that word exists. What is it?
I just
United
say United
States.
Statesian.
United Statesian. Okay.
Yeah.
It exists and it's the correct term. So let's
It
start.
is the correct term.
I might even bring it back because I'm redoing the play, so
Yeah,
I
bring
might
it
even bring
back.
it
I
back.
can shoot it. I can shoot your play.
Oh, I want you to watch my
It was
video. You
fun.
didn't see my video, right?
No, no lo vi.
Yeah, you can see the play. You're gonna love it. I guarantee it.
I got you.
So
All right.
Wait, I'm gonna put my email in the I'm gonna direct message you my email so you can send it to me.
I know that Miranda is hungry, and I know you guys have been on it for a whole hour. We just joined at the end, and I truly like Tato. To me, it's like maestro.
I got it.
I'm glad again, Ken, that you did this. Tato, I miss him so much.
Yeah.
Pero,
But not for nothing. Not for,
living what
not
he's
for nothing. Wait. Not for nothing. When I told him that you were coming on to, if he could wait for you, he said, "Alejandro quién?" I didn't want to say anything, but
Yo, don't start no shit.
Ya, aprovecha cuando se va, ni cuando está para
Maybe he knows three
defenderse.
Alejandros.
no. And I went, Alejandro, my son. And he goes,
broke my heart. You broke my heart. I'm gonna
Ale, llámalo.
I'm gonna text him. I'm gonna be like, a crying emoji.
Ah.
You don't know what
Who's this?
you don't know who
Perfect.
Alejandro is. It's
You don't
such
know
a
who I am?
Swiss-
That's
don't know-
perfect.
you don't
He
know who
did
I
a good
am?
job. I'm really happy that he showed up today. He showed the kids about the Puerto Rican. What is it? The Puerto Rican collective. The Puerto Rican collective, and what they were doing back in the '90s, and some of their artwork. I think, if I'm not mistaken, after all these artworks in the Lower East Side were painted over or whatever it was, I think there's maybe one, maybe two that I have to look for around there. That's PR, Puerto Rican Collective, PRC. So, and he's, you know how Alejandro is, I mean, Alejandro, you know how Tato is, where he'll tell you as it is. He's a nationalist.
We have a book, man. We have a book at Loisaida called Off the Wall that has
On the second
documented
one, on the
all
other side.
those social protest
The second
murals in our neighborhood. That Tato-
Really?
Yes.
All right, so I gotta go see it. I gotta go see it at Loisaida.
Yeah.
I'll
So
see it on December 7th.
December, Saturday.
Saturday, December 7th, cuando vaya para el Tiferio, voy a buscar ese libro.
Altiferio. All right, guys. Thank you for coming. It's 8:40. I'm hungry, and Miranda's gonna buy me dinner. So we'll talk. We'll talk at some other time. Cuídate ustedes. Thank you. Loisaida WS.
and spray.
Guys.
You get a chance to come to the Loisaida Center, do so. And if if it happens at Artisferio, even
Yeah, if it
better.
happens on
That's gonna
December
be-
Saturday, December 7th.
Spray is in Arizona. He can't come
And I'm
down.
screening my short film so you can see it there.
There's planes that.
Oh, shut up. Have a good night. Hablamos. Have a good night, everybody.
All right, good night, everybody. Nice to meet you all.
Gracias. Nice to meet you.
Peace and thoughts.
I am.
Cool.
Where am I?
Greece.